Look out! Don't do that. Come on, Five. You know that guy, Jim?
Josh, you're blocking the shot.
Come on, man. What you doing, Mike?
He's shooting. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from America's Best Name City, Sherman Oaks.
Make sure you're all kind of
Okay.
making sure you're complete.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from America's Best Name City, Sherman Oaks. With me here are three of my colleagues who I invited to join with me in a tour of these detention facilities. We saw one operated by the Bureau of Prisons, the other by ICE. A few things to bring to your attention, and then I want to turn it over to our colleagues to give you their observations. The first is that the ICE facility is supposed to hold people for only 12 hours. But with a, quote, waiver issued by themselves, they can hold people there for 72 hours. They have no beds. You sleep on hard concrete. Second, members of Congress should be able to view that facility, zero notice, 24/7. In fact, the Bureau of Prisons told us that they would give us that kind of access. But the law is specific to ICE detention facilities. We wrote it in the law many years ago, and yet they required 7 days advance notice. God knows what they had to hide. Finally, we saw very few people there. They wouldn't allow us to talk to any of them. When it comes to getting help from their local congressman, here's how ICE runs it. Your congressman can't talk for you or get information about you until you sign the form. And your spouse or next of kin can't sign the form for you. So your member of Congress can't talk to you unless we show you the form, and we may or may not do that. The interesting contrast is that the Mexican consulate has full 24/7, well, certainly business hour. They're there every day with total access to anyone who is a citizen of Mexico. And we're here not only to talk about the inhumane way in which they detain people for 72 hours on a concrete floor. We're also here to talk about these ridiculous raids that are taking place. We see them on the news, we see them in our communities, we see them in the San Fernando Valley. And Trump told us he was going to close the border and deport the felons. So what's his latest maneuver? He's firing the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, IRS, because the IRS won't give him a list of people who don't have Social Security numbers but still pay their taxes under a thing called a taxpayer identification number. In other words, he's going after not felons, not drug dealers, but taxpayers. Literally taxpayers, hardworking people who are then paying their income tax. He said he was going to go after the drug dealers. I'm an old tax guy. I'll tell you who doesn't file tax forms. Drug dealers. So he's not going after drug dealers. He's going after the people who work and live in our communities, who have been law-abiding citizens for decades. And some of them are being detained right now at that ICE facility. So I want to recognize Maxine Waters. You want to go last? So I want to recognize, I don't know who's more senior. I want to recognize Judy Chu, my friend from the San Gabriel Valley, who has joined us for this tour.
Well, we just went to the Bureau of Prisons Metropolitan Detention Center, and we just went to the ICE field office where we were able to see the inside, the cells where the detainees are being held. I have wanted to see this since June 6th when the raids started happening. And I found it disturbing myself. They hold 335 detainees at a time, 9 cells, and these are just cold concrete floors where people could be held, they say, as long as 72 hours. But what they say contrasts enormously with what I've heard from detainees themselves. I've heard from detainees who said that they've been held there for as long as 12 days and that they had only 1 meal a day and that they were given no soap or toothbrush or toothpaste. And I asked the ICE agents about this, and they said, oh, well, there are no beds because they're only here for at most 72 hours. And they said, we feed them 3 meals a day and, well, no toothpaste and toothbrush because they're only here for 72 hours. So there is quite a bit of contrast. I would say almost it's one is saying black and the other saying white. It's that different of a description of what's going on. And not only that, we then asked him how these detainees were being brought in and why is it that there are people out there with masks and with no identification on them. For instance, with the Penske truck incident where these agents just jumped out of the truck, they claimed that that wasn't them, ICE agents. They claimed that this was Customs and Border Patrol people. So what is it? Why is there not a consistent policy? But I kind of think that actually what they're doing is just putting the onus on another branch and just saying that they're responsible for the outrage that's going on in this community. So this raised more questions than it answered. And I just have to say, I'm deeply disturbed by what I saw and what I heard.
Now let's hear from Jimmy Gomez, who represents this area right here.
Thank you so much, Brad. First, let me just thank everybody for being here. This is my 4th attempt to actually get into the ICE detention facility, and we were allowed in. My first 3 attempts were denied because I dropped in, but according to law, I should be allowed in. And the reason why we have that law, so we don't have to give notice, is so that we can see the true conditions on the ground inside the building. So when we finally get in, it was as it's like somebody broke into a building, committed a crime, but then cleaned it up and put it all back into place. There's only 2 people in 9 holding cells, 2. There's maybe another 10 to 12 that were being processed as we were leaving. So of course, that's what we were going to see. We're going to see a sanitized version of what the cells and the conditions were that people were experiencing during the early part of June. We had denied every attempt for us to enter so that we couldn't see that the place was either overflowing or that the conditions were not humane and not sanitary. So we got to see exactly what they wanted us to see. And what we want to know is really what is going on when it comes to not only this facility when there's raids going on, but also what happened during June, the early part of June and May, and also who's running these raids. One of the things is that none of them say that they're in charge. They all point in the finger. Metropolitan Police are saying, the detention center, that's the federal, which is true. The Federal Bureau of Prisons controls a building. But I always kept on going to the right building, which is it's actually called B18, which is controlled by ICE. I presented my ID every single time, was denied, according to denied, and they denied me in violation of the law. And the reason why we want that ability to go in when we hear a violation is so we can check the real conditions in the building. So this this display, I think, is shows something about this administration. They don't want to be held accountable to the rule of law, accountable to the public or to the press. They want to just show what they want everybody to see. And then when it comes to the ICE raids, that's a whole different game, which it's interesting. ICE saying that they're not responsible for those. They say it's Custom and Border Patrol, even though they have agents. And also, we want to know more about the use of independent contractors. So they had independent contractors that help, that go in, meet Custom and Border Patrol or whatever agencies are conducting a raid, arresting them and handing them over to these individuals that work for the private contractor, and then they hand them off inside. So this is there's more to learn about what's going on. This is not the end of the story, but it shows why it's so important for members of Congress to have that law in place, which says that a member of Congress can show up, present ID, and check on the health and sanitation conditions of any ICE facility. With that, I yield back.
Not only did they insist on 7 days advance notice, they wouldn't let us talk to any of the detainees. They took our phones and wouldn't let us take a picture. We have today a leader in our community for decades, my chair of the Financial Services Committee, well, ranking member, soon to be chair, Maxine Waters.
Well, first of all, let me thank my colleague, Congressman Sherman, for getting us together one more time. I want to tell you that these members of Congress didn't just start this today. In addition to trying to get into detention centers, the protests that have been going on, work that has been going on, we're all getting so many calls, so much outrage from our districts, where they want to know why is it we have ICE, with masks on, jumping out of vans, taking people off the street. And I have some calls to my office that have witnessed this. They want to know why all of their rights are being simply violated. And so, in addition to coming to a place like this, where we know they'll sanitize it before we get here, we have to keep going because we have to get the message out. When you show up, we're able not only to talk about our visit here and what we see, what we've learned, but to help you to understand the seriousness of what is going on in this country. First of all, we know the President of the United States hates California, he hates Los Angeles, and why did they send in the National Guard to begin with? Why did they send in the Marine? It is because he's challenging us. He's intimidating us. He thinks he's provoking us, and he's trying to get some kind of war going on the streets. But we're smarter than that, and we're saying to all of our people, be careful. Places where you know that they're organized, when you get the message from those who are looking out, then stay at home. We know that we have some operations going where people are looking out for each other, but the president has increased the budget of ICE so that they could be even more brazen and they could raid and they could do the kinds of things that we're sharing with you today. Let me just add, even though this is not a part of our press conference, I just learned that the president just federalized all of the local police in Washington, D.C., and he's also sitting in the National Guard. This provocation is dangerous. It is dangerous, and I want everybody to understand it. The president knows exactly what he's doing. In his effort, in my estimation, to become a dictator, he's taking control and he's making sure that he sends a message somehow that he's saving America from all of these people who should be here in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything that you can do, continue to show up. Thank you for being here today. Continue to carry the message. Continue to go a little bit deeper. Ask a few more questions. Watch what is going on, not only here, but around the country. Because you can see a movement taking place that is broadening, that is widening every day. And right now, California and our area is right in the forefront of this attack. You see them in our community, they're sending the message all over the United States. So we're here today because we have a lot to say and a lot to see. Yes, we were with the Bureau of Prisons. We understand supposedly the role that they play. The role that they play is only if you've been convicted of a crime do they have the opportunity to process you, etc., etc. Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
Just want to comment and remind people the vast majority of those being arrested and deported have never been convicted of any crime. That in fact, immigrants commit less crime per capita than native born Americans. And that while they are able to always find one instance where an immigrant committed a violent crime and someone is dead, they never show you the pictures of the thousands of immigrants who are saving lives every day, whether it be in fighting the Palisades fire, where I represent, or the Altadena fire, where Judy represents the area, whether it be as doctors and nurses, whether it be as home health care aides. So many of us are alive today because immigrants did something that ultimately saved our lives. We should thank immigrants every day. With that, let's open it up for questions.
All members of Congress, we received a report of an LAUSD student going into his senior year who was reportedly taken by ICE a few days ago, and he reported to his family being in a holding cell with about 50 other people without access to basic hygiene, really echoing some of the conditions that you described here. We're trying to verify if it was at this facility or another. We've also reached out to ICE, to DHS around several different incidents, whether it's a raid or an incident where an individual was taken, and asked about kind of what you brought up, the different entities, and asked which agency was here off. They don't get the answer to those questions, or really a lot of the questions that we're sending in. And so, having said that, are there avenues that members of Congress have pursued to collect detailed reports, both of the facilities, about what's happening at these facilities, how they're being run, what's actually happened since June 6th across the country?
It's hard to identify the problems when you have to give them 7 days notice. That's why a number of our colleagues are suing to get the immediate notice. I think, Jimmy, you might be part of that lawsuit, and some of us will join that as well. Second, I know we'd like to repeal the provisions providing $150 billion to immigration enforcement that was in the big ugly bill that was passed. And ultimately, we're going to have an election next year. Frankly, there's going to be a special election perhaps later this year in which people will be able to reject the Trump agenda. I want to get the information about the particular student there and see how we can follow up and which member of Congress represents that student.
But I'm glad you raised that, because the question is, why are these people jumping out of these vans with masks on and not identifying themselves? And what gives them the permission to do that? We asked the ICE agents in there, and they said, why are people jumping out of these vans with masks on and no identification? And we asked the ICE agents in there, why are you doing this? They said, that's not us. They actually said that. They said, that's not us. we go in if there's probable cause, if there is a warrant out there, and they're going to ask them about their status. But of course, you and I have seen and heard about many cases where they just seem to jump out into a parking lot of a Home Depot or a Lowe's, or in my case in Pasadena, it was in front of a Winchell's, and just do whatever they want. So then these ICE agents said, well, that may be the way Customs and Border Patrol run. Well, we have to get to the bottom of this in terms of why there are different rules for different entities, if they are the case, if that is really indeed the case. And then we have to see why it is not consistent. But the bottom line is they're all taken here. They're all taken to this facility anyway. So what's going on there? And they implied that they give an A number to every person that ICE detains, and that therefore they can be located by family members immediately. But that is not the case as well. Many family members are left in the dark, frantic, not knowing where their loved one is. And that may be the case with this student.
You said that there are a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. What's your next step in trying to get ahead of it? What was your question? You guys were talking about a lot of smoke and mirrors that ICE is playing, with what's going on in the detention center. What's your next move to get ahead of this?
Well, go. You want to say something next?
Well, I just want to say that I want you to understand that they are working under the orders and the direction of the President of the United States of America. It is not as if something is going on and both sides of the aisle can do some negotiations and get some answers and get some corrections. It is the President of the United States of America that's driving all of this. And as Sherman just said, they put $150 million more to ICE in order to carry out his orders. So it's not as if some negotiation is going on and we can work some things out. These are direct orders from Trump.
And one of the things it's important to have these field visits is because we get more information from talking to the agents. And the Metropolitan Prisons folks said their Department of Justice, ICE is Homeland Security. They all said that they weren't part of ICE, and then the ICE agents said that they weren't participating in the raids. One individual did say that that ICE wears blue vests and everybody else wears green vests, right? And so, but you start asking how much money we've spent. There's like no one in there, and I doubt that it's gonna and I'm looking at the logbook, and it seemed pretty light over the entire period of July. June seemed heavy, but July looked pretty light. So, but when we ask if the functioning federal government, Congress would ask, how much are you spending? How many people did you arrest? Who did you detain? Da da da. And then we'd be able to say that that is a good use of taxpayer dollars. Even if you don't agree with it, are you wasting money or not? And what we're seeing from them is that they don't want any accountability, not necessarily individuals, but I would say this entire administration when it comes to the raids that they're doing. Customs and Border Patrol and Homeland Security, they did that MacArthur Park raid. For what? Show of force? To scare people? To make sure that people maybe self-deport? They sent out how many people to arrest 2 people at a swamp meet? How much money did that cost? Right. So this is not just about. This is mainly about oversight and conditions and sanitary conditions of individuals in their custody, but also about, are they using taxpayer dollars in a way that taxpayers would support. And right now, what we see is an administration that wants no checks, they want no accountability, and they want to spend billions of dollars for very little results in order to really do a dog and pony show for Donald Trump to show that he's tough on immigrants.
If I can just comment on that, when they detain somebody, there's one victim. There's a family of victims. But there's the entire community. Because every time they detain one person, it creates fear for thousands. And they tell us they're deporting the felons, then why are employers coming to me and saying my people can't show up for work? Drug dealers don't work in industrial facilities in the San Fernando Valley. Those are hardworking people. Two changes DHS needs to make, and if they won't make them, maybe we'll do legislation. One of those is to allow members of Congress to represent their constituents even when the constituent hasn't signed the form. When it's signed by their attorneys, when it's signed by their next of kin, that should be enough. And of course, the detainee should be offered a chance to involve their members of Congress. Second, if we're going to have law enforcement agents with covered faces, they need to have their badge number in giant letters across their chest. Why? Because if there's video of somebody committing a brutality in law enforcement, we ought to know who they are. And if they're covering their face, we ought to know their number. Because to send people out there with weapons and impunity is asking for trouble.
Are there other ICE holding facilities in the LA area that you're aware of, or they told you about any?
Yeah, there are sub field offices that they named. There's one in Ventura County, and then there's others that they mentioned. There's one that's bigger, like this one in Santa Ana, but they've mentioned that there's sub facilities. I haven't tried to get into those. I didn't know about those, and but those are even shorter time frames than I think where they hold people than here.
They had the bus ticket to go.
Yeah. Any other?
Well, this is an opportunity, not just about this visit, but to just tell them that they have to go.
So
get this press conference in our districts.
So you want to let me so the reason why congressional oversight and accountability is so important of the executive branch is because when there isn't any, they can do whatever they want at any particular time as long as they're justifying it for national security purposes or when it comes to crime. And that's what you're seeing when it comes to this administration. We have to kind of look at what they've done, right? They said that there was protests out here that were out of hand and that it was unsafe, even though the governor, the city, or the police department never asked for it. But what did they do? They federalized the National Guard, and then they sent in active duty Marines into our city. For what? Like for protesters. And then we warned that if it happens here, it's going to happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere else. They threw out down Alex Padilla. Right? Now they have federalized. They federalized the National Guard in D.C. They have taken over the D.C. police for a crime rate that's the lowest in 30 years. For how long? Right? Just in time for the counting the electoral college votes in 2029? Is that how long they're going to keep it? That's what people should be concerned about. Because this, how they treat undocumented immigrants, how they treat the public, how they treat the press, how they ignore all custom and practices, but also the rule of the law, they're going to be able to do whatever they want with a police force, a national police force like ICE that swells by tens of thousands of people. That's what people should be concerned about, because that's where we're heading. Is if they can do that there, and they can hold DC, they can do it anywhere where anybody disagrees with them, even if the facts on the ground prove otherwise. So I want everybody to make sure that they make their voices heard, learn the details, and then at the same time fight back in a non-violent way that holds them accountable. People need to know what's going on here. And at the same time, we're going to try to do it in Congress. We're going to try to do it in the courts, which I have sued as an individual member of Congress. And then we're also going to continue to do it in the streets. With that,
Let us remember that immigrants contribute $100 billion in taxes at the state and local level, that 1 in 4 entrepreneurs are immigrants, and that virtually half of all the Fortune 500 companies in this country were founded by immigrants or the children of immigrants. With that, I'll ask whether there are any additional questions. Yes.
I think you touched on what you saw a little bit. I'm hoping to elaborate slightly. If you're able to tell us, we've heard reports of a few dozen people being in one area with maybe one toilet to share. How many people were you able to see, if any, and were you able to corroborate any of what people
There's 9 cells. We heard they can only hold up to 100 people, but then they told us it was 334 divided amongst the 9 cells. The 9 cells have two toilets, or one toilet, and then a sink. There and in this visit inside, two people were there right now. So when I said they invited us in when there was nobody there, right? So they knew what they were doing by inviting us now today. They did it is because they didn't want us to see what was going on several months ago. Like, okay, it's like I'll invite you over to my house and it'll be spotless by the time you get there. Spotless. And my bed would be made. Trust me. It's like that every single day. And that's kind of what they did. They just cleaned it up.
They were describing it as though it was like heaven to be there. There were 9 cells. They said they never have more than 335. But I would not be surprised if it was 40 people in one room. 40 times 9, of course, that's 360 right there. And yes, all they had were 2 toilets. But even to get a drink of water, you have to knock on the window to get a drink of water. And just to get food, well, I was told by detainees that they only got 1 meal a day. They showed us their food pantry. While it looked pretty scanty to me, like there was hardly anything there, but they were making it sound like you could just knock on the window and get another meal. No, that's not what the detainees told us, right? It was fortunate for them if they even got 1 meal.
And one undisputed fact, there are 0 beds in that facility, and people are held by their admission for 72 hours. And of course, Judy Chu has at least one constituent who brought to us our attention somebody was there for quite a bit longer.
But this facility is designed for no more than 12 hours. They changed it. They got a waiver to hold people longer, up to 72 hours in the last several months. So I'm assuming that it occurred after January 3rd, after January 6th.
So this area is basically a holding area for inmates or detainees until they can actually move them to the prison, the actual prison itself. Is that what this area
That's
is?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it
Persons who are
called?
persons who are processed here are supposed to only be there for 12 hours. If they're going to be further detained, they're supposed to be taken out to Adelanto and other large detention facilities that are equipped to hold people for weeks and months. Of course, why we are arresting people at car washes and Home Depots to start this process is perhaps the main question.
But these are called ICE field offices. So this is called the ICE field office of Los Angeles.
Is this B18 then?
Yes, that's
Yes.
B18. Yeah.
If I may, one more question. One of the other reports I heard from him is one person whose wife was here, and it was still June, and he described a situation in which the women he and his wife was with and her were told, you should sign this paper, which likely is voluntary departure or something along those lines. He was told remain in these conditions longer. And so, do you have any insight into whether this facility and keeping people here in some cases longer than 72 hours is necessary, and what's happening on that front in terms of treatment?
I asked about that because I've heard that from detainees as well, that they're constantly being harassed to sign a voluntary departure paper. And they said they looked puzzled and like, no, that's not right. They said, well, we go in and follow up with them as to any of them want to do a voluntary departure, especially if we have to clear them out so that we can make room for other detainees. So the detainees feel like they're being harassed, but these ICE agents are acting like it's the normal course of business to keep on asking them if they want to sign this voluntary departure.
And was your visit scheduled?
Yes, this visit was scheduled 7 days in advance. This time we're following their rules. There are other occasions when members of Congress will knock on the door unannounced, and there are lawsuits pending about that. But this time we decided to follow their rules and to see what they would show us. Obviously, they showed us a sanitized version, 7 days advance notice.
So you asked to go, and then 7 days later they let you.
We arranged this actually at the, 15 days ago. We scheduled this to happen, and we gave them 7 days notice as to who would come.
I was so
On the mic, please.
when I, according to the law, which is I can just show up unannounced, present my congressional ID card, they're supposed to let me in. The rules changed after that by them, not by the law, but by them. So then my office tried to set up some prior meetings, 72-hour notice. It was a 72-hour notice request. We sent a 72-hour notice request, then our visits would get canceled. I think Brad had one meeting set up 7 days notice. That was, I believe, the original one was originally canceled. This was the second 7-hour day notice. So my hunch is that they would have canceled this one if all of a sudden they had a surge of detainees into their facility. They wanted us to show us nothing. Like, it was nothing. It was like no one was there. And it was deliberate so that members of Congress cannot conduct oversight. And the people that they were processing, they quickly moved us away from them to not be able to even ask them any questions.
Well,
I wonder
again,
if you asked with Border Patrol with this last Trojan horse operation
We asked them.
at the Home Depot. Those detainees, do they come here, or does Border Patrol have their own field office?
They bring them here. Yeah.
So what they one of the things that they want, like, there's an enforcement operation like the Trojan horse one. They put the people in the van or whatever they're having. Oftentimes they then take them to a meeting location where they have a private contractor or ICE that just provides quote unquote transportation to this facility. And then they're processed here. So anybody in LA County will be processed in this facility.
Is this the first time for all of you that you've gotten into this building since the raids began?
Yes.
Yeah. I tried to get in, waited 2 hours outside that B18 buzzer door, was not let in. And it's still the law, by the way, that we have the right to come in to inspect and do oversight without having to make prior announcements. So what they're doing is just issuing memos. It's just a memo.
So when you came to visit last time, did they let you in?
No,
Okay.
they just made up. I mean, basically, these rules are changing by the moment. And so they just made up rules saying, well, this is a field office, not a detention center. They just made up all kinds of things to restrict me from being cut.
first time I tried to get in, they slammed the door in my face. You know, I asked them today, why'd they slam the door in my face? They said, oh, we had a bum drag. I said, right. Right.
It's his glasses.
Well, for me, the most important, the most important thing about our visits is you come. You come to hear what we have to say. And I'm so appreciative for that. And I want to ask you, in addition to that, if you could get operations to witness what is happening with some of the ICE that's jumping out of these vans at particular places places where they know certain people shop and they're going to be what they're doing. So the more you're on the street, the more you will learn. The more you want us to talk to you, we will do that. You can call us anytime. We want to continue to do these kinds of business because you are showing up, and that's what it takes, educating the whole public about what is going on. And what people have to understand, today they may be focused on maybe Latinos, but we know there are Nigerians, there are Haitians, there are other people in this country that may be undocumented, who may be trying to use the Constitution by way of applying to get in. And so this is everybody's fight, not just one segment of our society.
Any further questions? Folks, I know we'll.
Well, the two people you did see, what can you tell us about their conditions?
They didn't let us.
They wouldn't let us talk to them. But one had his head down on the table, kind of sleeping, maybe upset. Don't know, but they're just human beings. We don't have to talk to. Then as we were leaving, um, we saw 3 or 4 people all being processed who just been brought in. I took an illegal picture. Whether I decide to show that to you, I don't know. But the only thing I said to them is, are any of you U.S. citizens or green card holders? On the off chance that we'd find some that they'd made that level of an extraordinary mistake. None of them responded, and they did everything possible to prevent me from talking to them.
Thank you. Thank you.
What happened when you went to the DHS offices from the detention area? Did you go inside the federal building?
We were at the Bureau of Prisons, and then we were at the ice field office.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's in the federal building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Free Palestine!